Hello everyone. I'm glad to welcome you to this workshop about the process of wireframing that we use here at OutSystems. A bit about me. My name is Margarida da Marta. I am a user experience expert at OutSystems with over 6 years of experience designing digital interfaces. I've developed my experience working in projects for the healthcare, financial, and government sectors. We've been doing a series of internal user experience workshops to train our engagement managers, our delivery managers, as well as our developers. They've been so successful and fun that we thought, why not share the wisdom? And that's why I'm here today. Welcome you all to the Wireframing Made Easy webinar. Before we start, let's have a look at all the topics that we'll be covering during our session today. We will start with a quick intro detailing the toolset a good wireframer needs. You'll be surprised how simple yet powerful it is. Most of the things you already have with you, and all the rest you can pretty much get for free, trust me. After that, we will get to understand the wire process basics. These are all about the phases that we go through in order to create something cool and useful. And then we will start sketching. I'll give you a few pointers here, but here's the thing. Everyone can do it. And yes, we mean it. We will dig a little deeper into what wireframes are, their uses and elements. All these will be topped off with a hands-on wireframing exercise, and right at the end, we will make something really cool available for all of you to play with, so stay tuned. It will be worth it. Okay, guys, without further ado, let's get this thing rolling. In this screen, you have everything you need to be an UX expert. If you don't have any of these at your desk right now, I recommend you to quickly go and get some and start using them right from the start of our session. You will understand why I say this later. Sticky notes, Sketchpad, Sharpies, or software like Balsamiq Mockups, InVision, or Evernote are all good and rapid tools to explore things like scenario and user flows, facilitate card sorts, or design high-level information architecture layouts. Well, don't be afraid of these big words. The last one is advanced state. The post-its, for example, are cheap and ideal for agile group work or sticking your ideas and shuffling them in the wall, just to get a debate started. Post-its lend themselves brilliantly to create quick, focused, and collaborative brainstorming sessions. Group, change, discuss, rearrange until you find that perfect solution. A blank or a graph sketchpad can be quite useful to help you do your sketches with pixel precision or just to get free-flowing and creative. Normally, sketching ideas on paper allows me to quickly visualize and play with different approaches to content structures, interface layouts, and interactions. Balsamiq Mockups is the OutSystem rapid wireframing tool of election. It helps you get work done faster and smarter. See, it has like sketching on a whiteboard, but you use a computer instead. Creating mockups is fast. You'll generate more ideas so you can throw out the bad ones and find the best solutions. So why am I showing this picture here? Wireframes are important for everyone from different areas of the business to understand what the project is all about. And be honest, no one likes those requirement documents. Engagement and delivery managers struggle with the wireframing process. Well, their struggle actually comes from lack of knowledge on the subject. They don't understand the process and its methodology, but mostly they just don't have the time for it or even know where to start. Well, they say an image is worth 1,000 words, right? So we need an effective way to go from a compilation of words to images, and that's our challenge. We need to understand what the clients really need, and by clients we mean project stakeholders and end users. When you wireframe specific project features on a website, you establish a way of communicating clearly with clients. You show how those features will function, where they will live on a specific page, or how useful they might actually be. Every project has its challenges. Here the message I got from our developers in previous workshops is, it's a real challenge breaking through the initial stage of fear and uncertainty when they receive a briefing. That's why when you have a customer asking you to build something and briefing you about it, I would like to encourage you all to get your pencils out immediately. If possible, try to look online for similar apps that you can draw inspiration from. That way, you will know what's new and get a sense of where the market is heading to. And remember, it's never too early to start sketching ideas quickly on paper. So let's get the process down, shall we? What's this process thing all about? We consider 3 phases. Sketching, where you come up with a concept ideation and explore multiple possibilities. This should be done fairly quickly and on paper. Wireframing, where you do your concept validation by defining structure and the app overall flow. And finally, the prototyping, where you refine and go down to the details of the structure and flow you come up with. A prototype is a more detailed and interactive representation of the final product. It consists of a building model to show off and test before you build the actual application. What prototyping also does is allowing you to test the final product before wasting time or spending money implementing it. You can wireframe your project simply by sketching on a piece of paper, as we mentioned before, or by laying out more refined structures and building interactive prototypes, for example, with InVision. It's critical that you define what the future app will be and how you can build it. As you go through this process, the interface concept should become more clear and refined. Let's move on to sketching. Sketching is a great starting point, and it's the most basic part of the whole design process. You can start sketching as soon as you start your research. Do it while you're looking, for example, references, solutions, and collecting initial requirements. Sketching can and should happen right from the start, at your initial meetings with clients or users. They are a rapid expression of ideas so that you can recall the concepts discussed later. And don't be shy about your sketching ability. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right? And we always think our other people's sketches will look better than ours. But you have to let go, because everyone can sketch. If you can draw any of these shapes, you can definitely sketch. It's as simple as that. Well, I hope most of you know what Pictionary is, or at least you've heard about it. They call it the game of quick draw. Basically, you have to sketch a word that another player in your team needs to guess in under a minute. Everyone can play this, and it's incredible how fast you can create these cool little sketches. I challenge you to pitch your bosses to get an afternoon of sponsored training. It's easy, it's fun, and it promotes team building. You can say you got a suggestion from the webinar. We'll vouch for you. And you know what? All in a sudden, everyone realizes that you can actually draw. Once you are done with the sketching, it's time to move to the actual wireframing. The big question here is, how do you go from sketches to wireframes, and what are wireframes? Wireframes are your app blueprints, and they should be lo-fi. They are critical to visualize, define what the future app will become. The main purpose here is to show the client, as well as everyone else involved, how the interface is structured before you move to implementation. And remember, clients are usually busy running their businesses. They want something clean and readable to quickly get up to speed. The key to wireframing is speed and simplicity. They need to be distraction-free. That's why, in most cases, we use the black and white colors. Think of a house plan. This is pretty much the same thing. When you commission a building, a new house, you expect the architect to show you his plans. These initial plans tell you how big each room is going to be, how you get from one room to another, and so on. Foregoing this step leads to some real issues. Let's say you go ahead and build a house anyway, without any plans. This is what you may end up with, right? It's a mess. So calling it a challenge is an understatement. Imagine you're in the kitchen and you can't find the door to the living room. You just know it's somewhere around. Think that exact same thing applies to your apps. By the way, I just thought about clarifying what's the difference between wireframes and prototypes, because sometimes people tend to have a lot of issues finding this difference. So prototypes are mid to high fidelity representations of the final user interface. The goal of a prototype is very straightforward. It stimulates interaction between the user and the interface. Whenever a button is clicked, the appropriate action must occur, mimicking the experience of a final full product. What are the uses of wireframes? Why are our wireframes good? Wireframes make it easy to communicate, promote, and validate your ideas among everyone that is involved in the project, whether they are clients, they are stakeholders, they are designers, developers, or users. Product and product managers and other executives are the internal business stakeholders. They review wireframes to ensure that requirements and objectives are met throughout the design process. Wireframes give managers an early close-up view of the site design or redesign. A wireframe that conveys the requirements and objectives of the product is really important to product and product management. Wireframes are also very important to establish an effective communication with designers. They are the base on which the user interface development is set. Wireframes help designers understand how elements are going to be displayed. They guide their creative process. Sharing wireframes with end users is equally important. I would even say that it's extremely important. If you conduct informal tests and iterate from the early stages of the process, you'll be able to first, gather feedback and reflect it on the next iteration. Second, validate expectations. Or third, identify issues earlier. Reducing guesswork is one of the most important aspects for the team of developers. They can start implementing their solution confidently even before the visual design is ready. It's quicker and it's easier to identify implementation changes as well as tracking goals and defining project scope. You use wireframes to get a more tangible grasp of the site functionality. This way, you can offer developers a clear picture of the elements they need to code. Backend developers, for example, they focus more on structure, functionality, and behavior, so low-fidelity mockups are for them. Front-end developers care about content and the information hierarchy as much as they care about structure, functionality, and behavior. Therefore, you'll give them high-fidelity mockups. So this slide is it's our global vision for a project at OutSystems. You can see the different phases of the life cycle we consider, and you can see how important we think wireframing is. It's a very important deliverable. Do not be afraid, guys. Start sharing from early on. You can only gain time from that. Skipping the wireframes delays feedback and increases the cost of making changes. In the app development life cycle, wireframing should start as soon as possible in what we call the initiation phase. Our tools of choice, again, are Balsamiq for mockups and InVision for prototypes. But you can use whatever works for you as long as it makes it simple to share the outcome and get feedback. Wireframes are all these and so much more. They are fast to create and iterate on, so if you fail, it's still okay. Remember, the principle is fail fast and fail cheap. Wireframes allow you to gather feedback quicker, they reduce waste and uncertainty, and in the end, you can get a clickable prototype to design interactions of the user flow. They are the way to go in order to create very early usability testing. And what happens if you don't create wireframes? There is a whole set of risks you have to consider. You risk failing to address the end user needs. You end up not having any visual specifications. You risk not testing or picking up the best alternatives, and you make it really hard to fix issues in production. Think hard about this. Ponder the impacts on time, costs, and overall quality if you don't do this. Wireframes reduce costs and uncertainty while allowing faster and easier changes. The amount of time that programmers spend on reworking something that is actually avoidable is around 50% of their time. Out of the top 12 reasons the projects fail, 3 of them are directly related to what we would call user experience or user-centered design. And they all come up from badly defined requirements, poor communication amongst clients, developers, and users, and from the stakeholder politics. So, UX professionals like me focus mostly on interviewing stakeholders, doing user research and testing, and creating user-centered design. All these things together can fix at least 3 of those 12 reasons why software projects fail. We are now going to talk about the elements that compose a wireframe. We will create a real-life scenario that we will hopefully relate to in order to better grasp this concept. Okay, so this is our briefing. The scenario for this exercise is about Christmas vacations. I know, it's still September, but don't tell me you haven't started thinking about those yet. You have presents to buy, you have to make time for your family gatherings, so you start thinking about requesting your manager some time off. If you're not one, try to put yourself in the shoes of a manager. As a manager, you have to deal with your employees' vacation requests. And what I'm talking about here is that we need to come up with an idea for a mobile app that easily allows you to approve or reject those holidays. So we're getting to Christmas mode now. How shall we tackle this briefing? Where shall we start? Remember earlier when I said that you should get your UX toolkit and have it by your side? So if you haven't started sketching yet, I encourage you to begin right now. So let's take a breather here and give you a little time to get ready. Grab your sketch pad, grab your post-its, whatever. So, do you have those ready already? Let's see how we would approach this exercise. To get this process started, we need to consider the form and elements of wireframing: content, structure, hierarchy, and functionality. I'll tell you all about these in further detail in the next few slides. By the way, again, I remember our tool of choice here at OutSystems for wireframing is Balsamiq Mockups. The screens you'll see in the following slides are all composed with Balsamiq. Let's start with the content. Content is about which elements will be displayed on screen and simplifying those to the essentials. Content is a collection of ingredients that will make your cake really tasty. You can think about them as isolated elements, recurrent patterns, or references other apps you found somewhere else. So, for example here, if you look at the element number 4 here in the slide, do you recall this pattern from somewhere? Yeah, it's from Tinder. I kind of found my dog there. Also, I drew some inspiration from Google Tools too. So for the swipe pattern I used. So think about this. What does a manager need to know in order to make a decision on accepting or rejecting? Well, we know he needs to see a list of holiday requests from his team. Having the number on display can be helpful, so he always knows what his workload looks like. A calendar is always handy. You can check how the entire team schedule their holidays and understand how busy is that period. You also need information on who's requesting the holidays, and don't forget about the accept and reject functionality, probably the most important piece on display. Now think about structure. How will elements be put together on screen? Structure is what allows us to give sense to the content we collect before and produce. We gather everything we believe makes sense for the user to have on screen, and now it's the time to start putting those elements together. First of all, you'll need to consider the device. Is it a smartphone, a tablet, or a desktop? If it's a phone, will it work on Android or iOS? Secondly, let's dig a little bit deeper with our questions. How many approval requests will there be on average? Are there more than 5? Are there less? What's the information we need to show managers for them to be able to make a decision? Can we fit it all into one single screen? Do we need to click to know more information? Are they approving in batch? Answering all these questions and understanding what's more relevant will guide you to sketch one or more options that can define the structure. Sometimes you can start user testing or sharing your thoughts as soon as you have a structure in place. So, once again, think how handy this all is and how much money you can save predicting usability issues that soon. Let's go into hierarchy. Hierarchy defines how the elements will be displayed in terms of positioning, labeling, and size. It's about putting elements in relation to each other, what needs to be shown first, and what's the most relevant for the user. Remember that when you are designing an app, other people are going to be using it, not you. So, a key question here is, how can we make this task simple? Is it obvious for the people to perform what they need to do? Quick hallway testing can solve any questions we may have and validate if what we are preparing for them to use is simple and intuitive as we thought so. 80% of the time, the best solution is the most simple one, but it's also 90% harder to get to that simple solution. After this, I'll give you a few tips, hierarchy for mobile devices. Focus on having one primary action per screen. Every screen we design should support a single action of real value to the person that is going to use it. For example, in our application, this should be the approve or reject interaction. These make it easier to learn, easier to use, and easier to add or build on when necessary. Screens that support 2 or more primary actions become confusing quickly. So, keep secondary actions secondary. Screens with a single primary action can still have multiple secondary actions, but they need to be kept secondary. Make them lighter visually or show them after the primary action has been achieved. Strong visual hierarchies tend to work better. You achieve them when you get a clear view order of the visual elements on the screen. So finally, and I hope you are still there by now, say hi in the chat if you are. Hello, Margarita, we are here and we are enjoying our webinar. It's time to talk about functionality. So functionality is about how elements work together and how they interact with the people using them. Both of these things should be captured within the wireframes by adding annotations or by building user flows. And by the way, user flows are like sequences of action in order for someone to successfully complete a task. In this example, our primary task is either to reject or hopefully approve the holidays request. Come on. So I should have made this approval button much bigger. Yeah, having a bigger button, that should be the app that I want my manager to have. So we are getting close to the end, but we still want to give you a few tips. This will take your UX expertise to a whole new level. First of all, and very, very important, keep wireframes simple. The key to wireframing is speed and simplicity. In most cases, they don't need to be extremely polished or pixel perfect. Color can help you make something stand out a little, but my advice is to try to keep your wireframe as black as white as possible. It's less distracting. Second, make sure you have some key annotations. Annotating your wireframes is super important. That way, anyone knows what they are all about and understand the interactions you're trying to detail. Keep them brief and to the point. Third, encourage your team to give feedback. Yank it out of them if you need to. Sharing your wireframes is a good way of improving them. Keep this in mind. Don't be afraid of anything at this stage. You can fail and there is no wrong here. Everyone's at the same stage. You're still figuring things out, what to build, and so on. So no problem at all. We know it's a big challenge to get everyone to agree into one solution, but get most of the team to buy into your ideas will give you all the confidence you need to kickstart the project. At the same time, this is the easiest and cheapest way of getting everyone up to speed and involved. So, to conclude, the main takeaway I would like you to get from this webinar is that it's really easy to produce wireframes. Producing wireframes to support your project will allow you to better communicate with your peers, save time, reduce costs, and create a more valuable product. Sharing your wireframes with others is a great way to easily get feedback, validation, and make sure the project is going in the right direction. And don't forget about Pictionary. You might think I'm joking, but this was the best exercise I've ever done with my class, and it has really, really amazing results. So, to conclude the webinar today, we are giving away some extra inspirational material produced here at OutSystems by me and my colleagues. Don't worry if you don't catch all of these references right now. We will make this presentation available on SlideShare for everyone. We will also make the balsamic files with our practical exercise available. And to get those, make sure you get out our amazing community and forums. We will post the files there. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this webinar as much as I've enjoyed presenting it. Thank you all for watching and staying with me up to the end. And cheers!